crash course, we're talking about birth control.
Well, what is birth control?
Wow. Birth control is use of contraception to stop an unwanted pregnancy. It's been used for decades and has been first recorded since the ancient Egyptian times, where they used cotton, dates, acai, and honey in a form of suppository birth control. This wasn't the only form of birth control seen in history. Other ways included grinded pomegranates, crocodile excretions, and even liquid lead and mercury, which had very bad effects on people. I do not recommend. Some of these were somewhat successful and half did the job, but none were as effective as the birth control pill we know today. The creation of the birth control pill all began when Margaret Sanger, a women's rights activist and a firm believer in women getting to control their own use of contraception, found a study that showed that hormones stopped ovulation in rabbits. 20 years later, and Sanger wrote a research report on how to use this information to create a birth control pill for humans. Fast forward a few years, and Sanger had now raised $150,000 for this project. But things didn't really kick off until one fateful dinner party where Margaret Sanger met Gregory Pincus, a biologist and researcher. She convinced him to start working on the pill. He did his first test run on rats with progesterone, which was a success. He then started working on his first edition of the pill, working alongside other scientists who hadn't quite been able to make the pill, but were all very close. Then 1954 arrived, and they were ready to test the first pill. It was tested in Massachusetts and was proven to be successful. A few more trial runs were done, and then it was time to hit the shelves. Unfortunately, this doesn't mean that every woman had access to birth control. The US Food and Drug Administrator said only women with menstruation disorders could use this, and it couldn't be used as a contraception. But years later, in 1960, approval was finally granted, and the popularity of the pill began to grow rapidly, with 1.2 million US women using it in 1962, and that number doubling in 1963. And by 1965, over 6.5 million women were using it, although not all states approved, with 8 states actually banning it, and the Pope at the time, Paul IV, protested against it. By the late 1960s, side effects were starting to occur, so Gregory Pincus's version of the pill was taken down, and a weaker version replaced it. Due to its convenient purpose and scientific background, its popularity is still growing rapidly today. Speaking of its scientific background, what's the science behind birth control, Cassandra?
Well, Erin, women these days use birth control pills for unwanted pregnancy or even the menstrual cycle, which is known as a period. Scientists need to figure out how the cycle actually works before they release the birth control pills. So, the period is proven that it starts its cycle about 28 days or later than the last one, and it is known that it happens to every single female on earth, where the woman's uterus or vagina bleed, and this happens because of the shedding of the uterus lining during the menstrual phase. The pill contains a mix of hormones with estrogen and progesterone that prevent the ovulation. Now, the ovulation is the process of when the female person's egg in the uterus is released during the menstrual phase cycle, or a sexual activity with their opponent. As known as if the egg from the uterus of the females is not released, then the sperm cannot connect, which means the egg is almost impossible to fertilize. This is the same phase during unwanted period, or said, if the egg is not released, then the bleeding from it could not be done. Because of this, hormones in the pill can also sometimes even connect to the lining of the uterus because of the female opponent, which makes it doubtful for the eggs to stick to the walls of the uterus during sexual activity or the menstrual phase, which is also known as the period. Now, if the female opponent stopped taking the pill because of possible side effects from it that happens to some women, she could have those stages where she would not take the pill because it is unbearable, and this makes her exposed to unwanted pregnancy. Or if she actually wanted pregnancy, she can stop taking the pills, and then she will be pregnant if she does the sexual activity with her opponent. So, But she would not be pregnant unless she used other equipment that has the same effect as the pill, which are condoms and etc. etc.
Now we are going to be talking about the impacts birth control pills had on society. In 1964, birth control pills were still controversial. Like I already said, it was declared legal in 8 states. Not so long later, it became the most popular form of birth control in the US. 2 years later, the controversy over the birth control pills took on a new dimension when African American activists charged that Planned Parenthood, by providing the pill in minority neighborhoods, is committing genocide. At 1969, Barbara Seaman wrote a book named The Doctor's Case Against the Pill. It is a book about the side effects that birth control pills cause. Due to the public hearings on the side effects of birth control pills, the sales on the contraception dropped by 24%. About a year later, the Senate hearings on the safety of birth control was disrupted by women who wanted a voice on the issue. Currently, there are still millions of women who still use the birth control pills today. In the US, 98% of women who are sexually active have used birth control pills at some point in their lives, and with 62% of those in reproductive age who are still currently using it.